Welcome to Replayable, where we go into depth on our favorite tabletop games that keep us coming back again and again. I'm the start player, Todd, and today I'm joined by Greg and Paul. For our 33rd episode, we'll be very industrious while manufacturing luxury goods in Anno 1800. It was designed by Martin Wallace and released by Cosmos in 2020. All right, which one of you two would like to trade me for my beer?
Oh, such splendid feathers.
Todd, I was hoping to get your but...
Okay, take two.
What?
That one's getting edited. Try again.
I was hoping for your...
Oh,
Still
man.
no. Okay. My island needs soap desperately.
Okay, let's go with that.
We have cleanliness issues, I think.
Right. Good point. Wash your mouth out with it. All right. Anno 1800 is a board game where players develop an island during the Industrial Revolution. Each player manages people, builds factories, and expands their population by meeting their citizens' needs. The game involves trade, exploration, and construction to discover new technologies, commodities, and new islands. When a player plays or discards the last card in her hand, that signals the last round is approaching. It's a game of planning and resource management inspired by the popular video game series. All right, who has been abroad the most recently? I was in Nashville back in April.
I think that's
anywhere
you.
in a while. Yeah, I think you win.
I win. Okay.
Oh, wait. I was in Santa Cruz in May.
Oh, you win.
It wasn't even out of state, though. So.
Right. Well, abroad can be a very loose definition. This was a board game made from a video game that came first. Are there any other games that followed that same path that stand out to you?
The first one that jumped...
Many.
Yeah, there's a number of them. The first one that jumps out to me, because it's got some similar themes to it, is Glenn Drover's Age of Empires 3.
Oh, yeah.
Which, very different game. I mean, there's a worker placement aspect to it, but it's another game that is based off of a big video game franchise, and that one I've played a lot. I didn't play too much of Empire 3, but I played a lot of AoE 1 and 2, so...
Right?
I also thought of Age of Empires 3, and what's interesting to me in comparing these two is that Anno 1800, the board game, is very much like the game itself, whereas in my opinion, Age of Empires 3 is the board game is absolutely nothing like
Yep.
the video game.
Nothing at all. Well, and they both streamline the concepts in different ways. You know, I mean, it seems like with Age of Empires 3, they streamlined it by completely abandoning what it was and just kind of making a fresh board game on the same theme and carrying in a lot of the same concepts.
Yeah, some other standouts that I thought of are Sid Meier's Civilization,
Of course.
the board game.
Yeah, which one?
StarCraft, the board game.
Oh.
Yes.
I also have XCOM, the board game.
Okay.
I'm surprised you haven't mentioned Mule with its board game adaptation, Planet Steam.
Planet Steam, I guess, I mean, there is a Mule, the board game now. But yeah, Planet Steam is basically the board game version of Mule.
And then I've played Fallout, the board game. That's an interesting adaptation of...
There's quite a few role-playing board games that turned into video games.
All right.
Most recently, I'm sure, Todd, you want to point out one of the award winners.
Do I?
Dorf Romantik.
Oh,
yes.
Dorf Romantik.
That was going to be my next mention. I actually mentioned that in our Carcassonne episode as well.
You did. So if we're just saying video games that made it to board games, then there's also Doom, the board game.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were trying to mention ones that actually we enjoyed at some level.
Oh, come on now. You liked it as Doom, you liked it better as Descent, and you liked it even better as Imperial Assault. I mean, it's
yeah, you know, the game I've played the most that is a board game version of a video game is Minecraft Builders and Biomes.
What?
Yeah, I play that with my kids all the time.
I've never played that.
And by the way, when I asked which version of Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game, did you mean, I wasn't kidding. There was a version that was published in 2002, another one that was in 2010, and then Civilization: A New Dawn was published in 2017.
Wow, I've only played the 2010 version.
Yeah, I didn't know about the early one.
Let's talk about the objective cards. I thought we would get to this later, but we can go ahead and tackle it now. So the objective cards are drawn at the beginning of the game, and they are set aside and are either end game scoring points or they are in games, not actions. Well, they are actions, right?
There's a few of the objective cards that you can use once per turn while you're playing, but most of them just give you points at the end of the game.
Yeah, it's an interesting mixture of both gameplay modification and end game scoring in those cards. They kind of set the flavor of the game.
Right. How do you guys feel about Porphyrion and why?
I like it just because it's going to make playtime shorter.
Yeah, it speeds up the game. I know that the reason I don't like it is because I've never won in a Porphyrion game because I don't know how to play a fast game. Or I should say, I don't like playing a fast game.
Right.
I always want more workers.
Yeah, I mean, the game really succumbs to groupthink more so than most other games we play or that get designed and released today. And so I think this may have been a problem of ours, but I think it's a common problem where the first time or two you play this game, especially without Porphyrion, it could go for 4 hours. I mean, it could never end if you just keep building up and up and up.
Yeah.
Right. And as an objective card, he costs you, what is it?
-2 for each card you have not played. Yeah.
All right. So Porphyrion is -2 for each card you haven't played at the game's end. So you're not really looking to expand your hand or be overly aggressive. In fact, you're trying to whittle it down as fast as possible. Is there any reason why you shouldn't play fast even in a non-Porphyrion game?
Well, my experience is that the person who ends the game, especially in a Porphyrion game, is not always the person. In fact, I don't think is often the person who wins. I think it happens in a non-Porphyrion game, but I think it's a tough balance because if you end the game too quickly, maybe you're not earning the points of somebody who's not worrying about that as much.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question because I don't know if we need to say this, but every time you gain a worker, you have to draw a card. And so if you want to gain more workers to be more efficient and do more things before you have to have a passing turn, you're just getting bigger and bigger. And if you want to draw the 8-point cards by gaining artisans and engineers, then you're building up more and more. And if you're playing that kind of game, you're going to have a bunch of cards in your hand at the end of the game. I don't think there's a way to really whittle it down.
But then, like you said, you could be playing for a long time if everybody's playing that way. I mean, somebody's got to be driving to the finish line. And in our game, the last time, I think it was Dave, right?
Yeah.
We were all sitting there looking at hands full of cards, and suddenly Dave's like, okay, I'm out. And we were all like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
Right, which makes this game really interesting because instead of the group deciding when it's over, it could be a single player.
Right.
Okay. What makes this game sing to you? Paul?
What I really like about the game, I think we're going to get to in the prompts, but it's mostly about discovering the path the game wants you to take and then planning out your trajectory for the remainder.
Yeah, it's a lot about finding that efficiency of like, what do I need to build to make sure that I can get these cards out of my hand quickly without having to trade to other players. But then how do I make sure I have enough trade tokens to get what I do need from other players? So it's kind of a really interesting balance and it changes. You can't always stick to a single plan because maybe somebody else builds what you wanted to build, the industry tile you wanted to build, and now you have to trade for it, whether you wanted to or not.
Right. Well, and Paul, that last game, which I think you won, didn't you embark on a heavy trade strategy?
Yes, I built as few production buildings as possible. Basically, I only built a building if I had at least 4 of that symbol in my hand. And that meant I needed a lot of trade tokens. So I played some population cards that gave me trade tokens. And honestly, I took a lot of festivals or passing turns to regain my trading counters.
Yeah, a couple games ago, Todd, you got really annoyed with Dave because he kept building the industries that you had built, and he won that game, which kind of surprised me because I thought, why is he building it when he has access to it through you? And it made me kind of realize that it's not about whether it's available on the table; it's about what do you have in your hand that you should have local that you don't want to go trading for. And he just built a better engine for getting his cards out of his hand on that game.
So then how many times do you need to draw cards?
Oh, geez.
That's really a groupthink thing because you could rephrase that question to how many workers do you need?
Yeah. I mean, and do you upgrade workers versus hire new workers?
Let's tackle that. Spoiler alert, I'm terrible at this game. I think.
So it's great you asked that question, because I went back and looked at the plays, especially the plays I've recorded in the last year, and on average, the winner had about 16 cards and about 13 workers, because when you explore the new world, you get 3 bonus cards.
Right. Interesting. So that was the question I was going to get to was, is there an ideal number of workers? And it's right around 13, perhaps?
Well, I don't know. I think it's really groupthink dependent, like how quickly do your games finish. Like we talked about, I feel our group tries to make the game finish rather quickly.
I think we almost always have somebody rushing the end when they can.
Right. So then I'll ask it again. But it's not a question of how many workers. It's aligning the commodities with what you have, or trying to at least find some synergies in an industry that's still available. Maybe.
Oh, so Todd, are you saying how often do you put your cards back in the deck to replace them?
Correct.
Okay, so you're talking about
recycling cards.
Yeah, recycling cards.
I would say I plan on doing it at least once per game.
Oh, I agree.
At least once. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's especially because you want to make sure you get that synergy of what resources you need to have. And if you're stuck with too many things that are just too diverse, and you don't have like a bunch of cards with soap on them, for example, instead you have soap and sausage and canned goods and clothing, and it's like it's all over the place. Well, you're going to be trading, or you're going to be wasting a lot of time building your own industry.
Right. I think that's important early game. And then in late game, you really want to get as many 8-point cards as you can out. And so recycling those until you can find one that's playable is totally worth it.
Yeah. Because I think that's one of the rules that I overlook. I start deciding, okay, I'm going to slog through the cards I have in my hand. And there could be a lot of diversity there, which makes it a really tough slog. And then, like you said, Greg, when day one building the same industries I had, it's because, well, they created a lot of synergies for him. I was just grabbing industries that I figured you guys would need to build your things, and that you would want to trade with me.
And honestly, more and more, I think that it's actually better to go the other direction. Deprive people of things. Don't give them things so you get a little gold. The gold's not worth it. Build the things that you need and hope that they, it's okay if they need them, but don't build things just so that other people will use them, or to try to get the gold from people. It's really not worth it.
Greg, I hear you saying that you think we overvalue gold.
I think so. That's what I've been thinking in the since our last play, is that building things like, I built coats because I knew I wanted to upgrade, but I wanted to be the one to build coats because that way I'd get the gold for it. But you know what? I got maybe 2 or 3 gold out of it, and I spent a couple actions just setting up to build the coats. It wasn't worth it in the end. It would have been better to wait for somebody else to do it.
To build coats. The reason I love building coats is because then when you do a population upgrade,
right,
you have access to 2 coats right away.
Absolutely.
That you can upgrade 2 of your engineers with.
But I guess what I'm saying is that it can be worth it, but it shouldn't be done just knowing that it's has good trade value. It should be done for that reason, that you're planning on using it to do the upgrade to the investors. You want to make sure you have them, and so you're building them for yourself, not for other people.
Okay. So that would be a change in play style for me personally, but that's okay. Like I said, I'm bad, so change is good.
Well, I do the same thing, Todd. I tend to try to get the commodities that I think are going to be more valued by other players, but
like blue coal.
Yeah, I mean
that makes a lot of gold.
Yeah,
right?
It does. But I think it's more important that it spares your red workers and allows you to spend blue workers on that if you've got a way to create, upgrade your greens to blue quickly. I think there's more value in that, and that's a reason to get blue coal. But getting blue coal just because you want to try to earn gold, I don't think is worth it.
Yeah, the red worker thing is real. We ran out of red workers in our last play, and I think that happens fairly often at high level of play.
Or 4-player games.
Or both.
Yeah, I think we've mostly played this at 4, and I feel like there's a lot of things we run into at 4-player that maybe we wouldn't run into as much, and that's one of them is the resource limitations, and the fact that we have to trade a lot more in 4-player than you do in 3-player.
Which means you can also get away with building a lot less, like I did last time.
Yeah.
And around we go.
Yeah, so Paul, do you think that 4-player enables a little bit more of a forking strategy then? Or whereas, maybe a 3-player game, it's everybody kind of has to play more of the same game.
Yeah, I think the fewer number of players, the more you have to build. In 4-player, it's very easy to only explore the old world a single time. And so if Bente Jorgensen, which gives everybody 18 points if they only did one old world exploration, comes up, you just pump your fist in 4-player. But in 3-player, that's a really hard decision. And in 2-player, you're like, she's not worth it.
So, Zoolander references aside, is blue steel worth going after?
I've never considered it. What does it get you? I don't know. I love blue coal because it allows you to upgrade your blue workers to red artisans more easily, I should say. I don't know what blue steel gets you.
So steel is normally on the baseboard, it's a red industry. So you can upgrade it so that it can be manufactured by less skilled workers, and it's needed by a lot of later game tiles. It's needed by a lot of the red tiles and some of the other, can't remember, is it needed by ships? Any of the ships?
Oh, I think it's needed by the cannons, which are
cannons, that's
required by the ships.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know. It still falls into that category of if it's in your game plan to use a lot of steel, then it's probably worth it. Otherwise, I don't see building it just so that other people can have steel cheaply.
Right. It seems like blue steel would be great at collecting gold because everybody's going to want to pay you a single trade token for it.
Right. So it crosses that line. But coal being a red resource, that's also 2 trade tokens for it, right?
If you trade for red coal, yeah.
Right. They both incentivize someone, if they have to trade for it, to trade for it.
Well, and I think they also even maybe have somebody spend a trade token rather than producing it locally because those red workers, they might need them on something else.
Right. Okay. What is the reason why you always have to hang on to 2 greens?
That's right.
Unless you want to upgrade to blue wood. I was thinking about that today. I don't think we've ever done that.
Is that a thing?
It is a thing. You can upgrade for free. No cost. You just upgrade. You can just upgrade to blue wood.
Okay.
Well, all you need to get rid of your greens is a brick. Every brick turns a farmer into a worker.
Interesting. Okay. Add that to the list of something to try in the next game 4 months from now.
I don't know. I kind of want to play again right now because I've been thinking about it so much today. I want to get it to the table again.
Well, you guys have 2 weeks of 3-player games coming up.
This is true.
Yeah, so I mean, for the same reasons, I really like being the one to build windows.
I did too, but that was also because I think they were needed for the ships I was looking to build. I want to say windows are needed for the level 2 gunships. Does that make sense?
And they're needed to upgrade to engineers as well. If you want,
that's what I was keying on. Is if you want to get engineers, the purple cubes, which everybody wants, and in the new expansion everybody starts with, then you need to either have your own Windows plant or trade for Windows.
Exactly. All right, so windows aren't needed for ships, but they are needed for engineers. That seems to be the early thing that we're all kind of looking for.
Right. You can either get population card worth 3 points that gives you an engineer, or you have to train artisans into engineers yourself with Windows. And it's pretty inefficient, I think, to take the population upgrade action unless you yourself can produce windows or coats.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can only trade for one of those resources, so you can't trade for 3 windows. You can only get one. So if you're upgrading workers.
There's a lot of things going on with this game to keep track of.
There's often overlooked rules, right?
Like the only being able to trade one of a good each turn?
Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's one of them.
Being able to basically put some building you've constructed back onto the board.
Right.
Yeah, the one that I always forget is if and when you do run out of population cards in a deck, if you grow your population, you then have to spend gold to get that, or if you don't have the gold, you can't do the action
because the deck is empty.
Right. So it is thought of as a cost that you're picking up that card. It's not not a benefit to you. It is a cost that you're picking up that card because it's a potential liability at the end of the game.
And I think most importantly, something we didn't realize in our first play was that you don't have to use a population card when you play it. You can kind of save it to the side and use it when you really need to.
Right.
Yeah, and that's or you can save them. You can not use that card yet. You can leave it untapped, or maybe that's the wrong word to use, but unused and save them for after your festival. I've certainly done that.
Right.
Just like the extra actions you can save until the end of the game.
What I thought was interesting was after we played this game a couple times and got the hang of it, we saw that the designer had posted on a Board Game Geek forum about some rule changes that he was implementing in the expansion. And then we just started using those rule changes. And I think we like the game a lot more because of them.
Oh, I agree.
So let's talk about those. Which rule changes specifically?
There's 4 that we use. The first is at the start of the game, everybody replaces any cards in their starting hand that reward them with a purple cube, an engineer. The second thing is that when you build a building, if you want, you can block it from being used by anybody else until your next turn. So let's say you really wanted windows, so you built glass, you could say nobody's allowed to buy this glass from me, and then on your next turn you could be the first to build windows.
Which is an interesting distillation of the expansion rule, because the expansion rule functions slightly differently.
Yeah, I find it interesting to see which of these actually ended up now that 2 years late, they finally are getting the expansion out the door. Well, I'm assuming, it was Martin Wallace had it completed, had an expansion finished, and then Cosmos gets to develop it, and they take their time in developing it and play testing it. And it's interesting to see what made it to the final product and what didn't. And, we block it just for that first turn. Now they've got what they call patents that you can put on any new industry. And in the expansion, there's actually a way to build multiple new industries in a turn. And so anytime you build a new industry, it moves off of any one that it exists already on and moves to the new one. Or it moves off when you use that industry. But you can leave it on for more than one turn. Whereas we always...
Or when you festival.
Whereas we always played it that it lasted for exactly one turn.
I see.
Which I'm kind of ambivalent on that. I think I like the fact that it only lasts a turn because it keeps somebody from...
It's less to keep track of, right?
Well, it's less to keep track of. I mean, they have a token to keep track of it, so that's not a big deal. But I think what I like about it is that the patents allow you to hoard an industry. I can build Windows early, even though I might not be planning on using it for a while, and until I build something else, nobody can use it.
But somebody else can build it.
True, which certainly will happen.
Unless it's a 2-player game.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I've never played 2-player.
It's only one of each building out there, so it's different.
Well, that makes sense.
And then there's the extra gold when trading.
Yeah.
And what he posted 2 years ago was just if you trade for somebody's purple building resource, they collect 2 gold instead of 1.
Right. And of course, in the expansion now, they've increased that even more so that you get the same amount of gold as the number of trade goods that is used to get the resource.
Right. So all those red goods that people are having to spend 2 trade goods for, you're getting 2 gold for.
And then finally, when you explore, he recommended looking at 2 tiles and keeping 1 instead of just taking whatever's on top of the deck. And thank God we play it that way, because I would be very unhappy sometimes if I just had to discover what was on the very top of the stack. Yeah.
Right?
Hey, come on! This is what it was like in 1800, right? You didn't know what you were going to find.
I don't play board games for reality.
Sometimes you found a ship just sitting out there.
I only enjoy verisimilitude so far.
The interesting thing is that rule doesn't seem to have made it into the expansion. There doesn't seem to be anything to mitigate that randomness in the expansion at all.
Well, we have post from the designer that we framed and hung on the wall, so we could say it's not a house rule.
It's hanging in the house.
It's the advanced rules. Well, and Martin Wallace is pretty well known that he does that. These are the rules that made it to publication, but this is how I play it, kind of things.
Also true. All right, so we've talked about the objective cards. We talked about the population cards. There are also the expedition cards, right?
Yeah, which become especially good when one of the 2 objectives related to them are in play.
Right. Like the last game we just played where it was the person that had the most, right? 3 objectives. So there's an objective that awards players who have the most expedition cards, and then there's also objectives for using those expedition cards, specifically the zoo and the museum.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it would be a really squirrely game if all 3 of those objectives came out. It would just be a race to hog up all the expedition cards and try to get some engineers and investors before the end of the game.
It's interesting. In some games, those expedition cards are almost an afterthought. I mean, they're nice points at the end of the game, but you really don't need to worry about them till the end of the game. But yeah, I can imagine it would be a race to get them.
So when normally is the right time to start thinking about doing those? Do you look at it from like, I've got 5 cards left in my hand, I better start getting expeditions. People are starting to get close to building luxury goods, I better start looking at expeditions. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because you have to have 2 cross sword tokens to be able to draw them, or a New World card.
So yeah, you have to have the exploration ships or other ways to get exploration tokens, but you have to be able to generate the exploration tokens. And then also the cards are worthless if you don't have the workers to fill them. So you have to kind of keep in mind that if you don't have any investors, you might draw a worthless card.
Right.
So you do want to build up and make sure that you have the workers that fill those cards up to make points from them.
Yeah, in general, I always try to explore the old world early once, and then the new world by mid-game once.
And that's the only exploration that you're going to do on that score. So anything else you get, you're going to be turning in cross swords for.
In a 4-player game, that's likely true, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Festivaling, so the resetting. What are your thoughts about when to festival? How close do you like to try to perfectly manage all of your workers before going to festival? And how much gold is it worth to attain that state?
You know,
Yeah, I have seen Greg and Dave try to get down to the very final worker.
I was going to say, this is one of my favorite parts of the game, and probably my ultimate downfall in this game is that I really like to use every worker, but it's probably not the best way to play the game.
Because then you're looking at suboptimal decisions just in the name of getting value before you festival.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's trying to make sure that I've used everything I can, but maybe I'm not taking the most efficient path through completing, especially because I tend to complete a lot, if not all of my farmer and worker cards, my farmer worker cards, the blue-green cards, every game.
Right.
But I don't ever complete enough of the 8-point cards. And I think that's part of it, is that because I'm trying to use up all the resources, I need to start focusing more on just getting to the tech I need for those 8-point cards and getting them done quickly, because that's usually what's stuck in my hand at the end of the game and what is the big differentiator between me and the winner.
Yeah, I think of it this way. How many extra actions are you getting with that efficiency? And I think the answer, at least in our meta of these quick games, is 2 or 3. I think
at most,
as a frequent festivaler, am using the festival action 2 or 3 times more than you guys are.
Interesting.
Yeah, and yet I get such a feeling of like, it's so rewarding when I know I've only festivaled once and you're already festivaling your second time or your third. It feels good, and it shouldn't, but it does. It's like, yes, I'm playing efficiently, but no, then you go on to win. So obviously,
Yeah, so I think I want to say the frequency of my festivaling depends on how many ships I have.
Yeah.
If I don't have a lot of ships, then I agree with Greg and trying to get the most out of my cubes. But if I have a board stacked out with ships, I don't even care about how many cubes I have unused. As soon as my ships are empty, I festival.
Interesting. I tried to go with the real hard exploration strategy, so building a lot of warships last game. I had a lot of cards in my hand that required the swords, but I had too many of them. I was running out of swords pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, how many do you think is too many?
How many warships? I had like 7 sword capacity between my ships.
That's awesome.
Is it?
I can't see myself going over 4 in any game.
Right.
I don't think...
But I was looking at cards that had +4 cross swords requirements on them, and I thought, okay, great. But you can only play 1 each turn. So that was the other issue. It's like, okay, I could do nothing but ships, but it's only going to get 1, maybe 2 cards out of my hand. Now, those were turning into trade goods, so they were useful elsewhere. But It was still a weird game where it felt like I was listing.
Right. Whereas if they were all trade goods, like let's say you had 7 or 8 trade goods coming in every time you festivaled, that would be awesome. You'd be able to get so much done.
As you did.
I think in a 4-player game that we all need to value, well, not except for Paul, we all need to value trade tokens a little more and merchant ships. And by the way, they're exploration ships, not war vessels.
I was in the Navy. They're warships.
What exploration ships have cannons?
Mr. Navy man over there.
Right. I mean, come on. The level 2s need cannons. The level 3 need Dahlgren guns. I mean, these...
Let's just call them littorals, right?
I'm looking at the rules. They're exploration ships.
Yes.
Exploration ships. Yes.
No colonizers here, we promise.
All right, with that, let's move on to the prompts. So, weight and complexity on Board Game Geek's scale of 1 to 5. How would you rate the complexity or the weight of Anno 1800? And Greg, I'm going to let you go first.
I think this is a 4. It's a light 4, though. So it's got a lot of decisions, but at some point you're kind of on rails and you're just reacting to what's happening around you more than really long-term planning.
Right? I could see that. I also had it down as a 4. Normally I'd call this game a 3, but it has one element that goes just a bit too far for me, and those are the objective cards. It's like, while I'm doing everything else, I forget that, there are these other things I'm also supposed to be keeping track of. And while I'm trying to plan all of my tactical moves, I lose sight of those extra actions. So for me, that adds a point to the weight.
I agree with you guys for the first few plays, but for me, after several plays, it's a 3.
Well, and I was just going to say, I think maybe having the discussion we had, I should be playing this game as a 3 and stop trying to make it such an efficiency game on getting all my workers played.
That might be true.
It 4 when it doesn't need to be.
The game is telling you it's a 3, Greg. So then strategy. How much opportunity is there for strategy and long-term planning on the same scale? Paul?
I actually rate this a 4.
Huh.
Because you get a lot of cards early on. The game starts with different objectives every time. But once you see the objectives and you've drawn most of your cards, you can then map out your preferred trajectory all the way to the end.
Okay. So listeners, listen to Paul's answers because apparently they're the right ones. I have this down as a 3. And like I said, I'm terrible at this game, so I think it's a 4 in weight and a 3 in strategy. And apparently if you approach it from a 3 in weight and a 4 in strategy, you win.
Yeah, I'm with you, Todd. I rated it a 3 in strategy, and I'm wondering if I'm missing something too. So, because often I find myself kind of on rails in the second half of the game where I've mapped out my strategy and I'm just kind of going along. I don't feel like I'm making any big decisions in the second half of the game.
I'd say that's mostly true because the only decisions you have to make after you've planned out your trajectory is how to react to other people doing something unexpected.
Right.
We have to do more unexpected things, Todd.
He had a gazillion trade tokens. It didn't matter what we did.
Just stop giving me gold.
Yeah, don't trade. Well, hey, that's something we didn't talk about is how much do you guys value using gold? I mean, because I started to feel like I don't really need the gold that much. I use it because I have it, but for me, it just goes into that whole, I get to use every worker this way.
I think you only need gold when you're short on a specific color.
Right. I would say that my attitude about gold is heavily influenced by our meta. And when we're looking to trade, we always evaluate who has more gold and then we trade with the person who has less.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the right approach.
Right. That's like saying he who spins his gold the fastest gets the most.
And that's what's happening, right? Like we should be saying, how many cards do you have left in your hand? Or how many cards have you played? In other words, if you're winning, I'm not trading with you.
Yeah, I don't think we do a good job of mid-game evaluating who's winning. And I think that's part of our table meta in general is we know that doing that will slow down the game. So we try not to play that game too much. But, anytime you're having to choose between player A or player B, you should have some objective measure to make a decision. And it's hard in this game, I think. Yeah.
So we go with what we can see, and that's the pieces of gold that people have. So I like spending gold because it makes it more likely that you're going to trade with me.
That's some meta right there.
It totally is. Admittedly so. All right, luck. How much do you think luck plays a factor? Same scale, 1 to 5. I'll go ahead and say that a score of 1 here doesn't mean 0, right? There's no 0 on this scale. I believe that the way we play, it's a 1. And when I say that by the way we play, I mean including the method of drafting Old World and New World tiles. So to draw 2, choose 1. I feel like there's a lot of ways to mitigate the luck in this game, and it's pretty low.
Yeah, also getting rid of the purple upgrades from the worker,
starting hands,
the farmer worker deck. Yeah. or from the starting hands. You're right. That's a better way to put it.
So I had it as a 1. What did you have it as, Greg?
I put it as a 3 based on based on rules as written. But I agree with you. The way we play it, I would probably rate it a 2 because it's not a no luck. There's still luck involved in whether you get a good synergy with your cards, whether you can replace those cards and get a better synergy with the action to replace your cards. Yeah, I mean, I definitely prefer the way we play it for exactly that reason, because I think if you don't play it with those mitigations, it does become kind of a little too heavy on the luck.
Okay.
Yeah, I rated it 2. I think there is a significant amount of luck, but the game has many ways to mitigate that luck.
Yeah.
And like Greg said, most of the luck is in the card abilities and if they synergize or just what the cost of each card is. And if you have a lot of the same or not.
Yeah,
right.
And most of the luck is front loaded too. You know, it's in the first few turns of the game, not towards the end of the game. The only thing, maybe the expedition cards have a little bit of luck, whether you get ones that match up with your workers or not. But that's minor compared to the games you get at setup. I mean, the cards you get at setup.
Right. Okay, I agree. So then, theme. How much do you think the theme has been integrated with the game? 1 to 5. Who wants it?
For me, it's a 4. I think the game does a great job of feeling like everything is integrated together, and the theme helps me understand all the different rules and capabilities.
Okay. Greg, what'd you have?
Yeah, I came at this from the viewpoint of how easily could you replace this theme with another theme? And I think the answer is you could pretty easily do it. And so I gave it a 2, but I do agree with Paul that everything does kind of make sense and there is an internal logic to everything that fits with the theme. So maybe I should bump it up to a 3 for that reason. Yeah, I think you could reskin this pretty easily.
Interesting. That's an interesting gauge to use. Could it be reskinned? Sure. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be industrial manufacturing, but anything. Like you could set it in the fashion industry and go from raw goods to refined materials and cloths to designer clothes if you wanted to.
Exactly.
Huh. Okay. Well, I'll stick with what I originally thought I was going to answer here. For me, it's a 5. I don't know what a 5 would be in this if not this game. Like, what would be more industrial manufacturing themed than this? It doesn't need miniatures, and I really feel like I'm managing all of the logistics and supply lines around this stuff. So I really like it. But then again, this is more of an activity than a game for me because I'm not winning.
Well, and maybe just in support of my 2, I often just feel like I'm playing cards and pushing cubes while I'm playing this game. I lose sight of the theme, but maybe that's partly on me.
For Todd, it's a highly thematic activity.
It's a highly thematic activity, yeah. I'm just trying to build the purple things. That's all.
Wait, what are the purple things?
The luxury goods, right? Like the
horseless carriages, and
the steam engines,
okay.
and the
yeah. Well, just you called them purple things, not luxury goods or advanced technologies.
Yeah, no.
See, they're just a color in a cube.
Okay, fair. Still a 5.
Hey, if it gives you the feel that you want to feel, that's what matters, right?
And the theme is so good that the video game used all the same graphics.
They did, and they were prescient about it. It's like they had early access to the board game.
That's how influential Martin Wallace is.
There it is. I'm totally leaving this section in, by the way. All right, favorite player account. What is it best played at? I'm laughing because I don't know if I have a whole lot of experience outside of the 4-player.
Yeah.
Right.
I've never played it at 2. I can't really speak to that. I prefer 4 over 3, mainly because I think it gives more opportunity to try different strategies.
Yeah, totally agree. Paul?
I also prefer 4 because it has the most trading and it does exactly what Greg just said.
All right. Then least favorite player account. Are we just going to be on the other end of the spectrum of this one? Do you have a least favorite player account? And I'm not saying the game is bad at whatever your choice turns out to be. It's just not as good as it is at your favorite. Greg?
I have to give it a de facto 2 but I've never played it. Take that with a huge grain of salt. Maybe there's more to it. I'm just in general not as much a fan of 2-player games to begin with. But I didn't realize, though, that you only play with one of each style in a 2-player game. That makes it sound a lot more interesting to me.
It is interesting, but it is also my answer for least favorite player account. Although I've never played solo. I haven't even played the video game.
Oh, that's true. There's solo mode, too.
Honestly, I don't like being forced to build a lot. And that's my only reason for putting 2 in this category.
Is there a solo mode out of the base game, though? Because I thought that was an expansion.
Oh, right.
There's an expansion campaign, but they have
Right.
solo rules that you can just play. They're out there somewhere on BGG.
Okay. Yeah, I also had 2-player as my least favorite, although it's an academic decision. It feels to me like it would just be zero sum, to use Dave's main objection to these kinds of games when played with 2 people. It's either you get the point or I get the point. There's not a lot of opportunity to be variable with that determination without having at least a 3rd player added into the mix. So at that point, look, it may be fine, but I think I'd rather play a different 2-player game.
Yeah.
So actual playing time. Boxes can lie, and the box says 120 minutes. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's true.
Especially when you play the game as a 3 for weight.
And a 4. From my records, we have averaged less than an hour 50.
Yeah. I think, again, we have that meta that we always have somebody racing to play all their cards. It's usually Dave, but we always have somebody racing to play all their cards quickly and be the first out, and that keeps the game from getting too long. I think that's part of why he does it, is because he doesn't like it when the game goes 3 hours.
I do the same thing. I've noticed that either one or both of you guys have gone up above 20 cards before, but I never have.
I've gone over 20 cards? Or are you talking about Greg and Dave?
No, I think you have as well, Todd. Honestly, I don't recall.
Huh. Because I'm, again, not being good at the game. I'm usually trying to drive as quickly as I can. I just don't do it well. My engine ends up stalling and I can't seem to clear cards out of my hand. But I would say that the box playing time actually seems high for us. So if you're saying we're out in an hour 50, that's 10 minutes faster than the box playing time, and we're playing a 4-player game.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's worth noting, though, that it is a decision the players make in this game. You know, you can certainly make this game last a lot longer by just trying to build every industry there is.
So Perforian should be required in every game. Is that what I'm hearing?
If you want to meet the box time.
I think you should train yourself with Perforian before you play the game without Perforian.
Interesting.
I mean, if we're gonna make Perforian part of that, I mean, I think that's one thing that Perforian does for the game, is it teaches you how to play the game a little leaner and quicker.
Right. All right. Expansions. So we've touched upon the one expansion that right now does not have an English version planned, and a lot of what makes it different. And there were a couple of additional items. And then there was a single player campaign and there was a promo. So are there any other comments you want to talk about the expansion, seeing as how we've played none of them, but we've incorporated some of the rules?
It is a little steampunky.
Yeah, definitely. Airships.
Right. Yeah, the level 3 shipyards become hangars and the level 3 exploration ships become airships.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I think what I worry most about with it is that by default allows everybody to do multiple actions every turn, and that could be playing multiple industry cards, it could be playing industry tiles, it could be multiple cards out of hand. So it makes that ability to predict when the game's going to end that much harder, because now if somebody's got 6 cards in their hand, they might be able to knock it out in just 2 turns instead of 3 or 4 turns.
Interesting.
There's also kind of public population cards called innovations,
right,
that you have to race for.
And then when you earn them, they're their only source of gears.
And the gears are one of the things that give you those extra actions.
Right. Once you've taken an innovation action and you've earned a source of gears, then you can only perform 1 gear action per turn.
Right.
So you don't get an endless supply of them based on having multiple gears.
No. And you can't take extra innovation actions on any turn.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting to see if we get an English version ever made. Because I'm certainly not going to chase down a German copy and try to do paste ups on it.
Yeah, I did think it was interesting that the airships replaced the tier 3 ships, and they're more powerful than the tier 3 ships were.
Right.
It really seems to reward a longer game.
Okay. So then, most recognizable comparison. The highest ranking game that is most like this one. Paul and I have already hinted to each other what our selections are, so there's no crossover. So, Greg, you're the wild card. You want to go first and put me out of my misery?
I had a tough time choosing this, and I didn't think of anything, from the video game side. I actually went with Sidereal Confluence as my first choice.
Hey.
Oh, nice.
Mainly because you've got a shared tech tree where anybody can build technologies, but everybody gets access to it after a turn. And then you're trading, in Sidereal Confluence, it's a literal trade where you have to get agreement from the other players, but you're trading for resources that you can't produce to get them from other players. So I thought that there's a lot of similarities there. It's a very different game, and it's a game that plays at, better at a higher player count, but just that vibe of common check tree and trading seemed to fit.
Yep.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. It's been a while since we've played that, because it's been a while since we've had 6 people at game night, and that's kind of one of our fallbacks for having 6. All right, Paul, we're not overlapping, so go ahead.
Yeah, so my pick is Ora et Labora.
Nice.
Oh, interesting.
It's a game about monks trying to get luxury goods, at least luxurious for the monks, like beer. And so the entire game is about chaining goods productions from a low level up to a high level. And it also has multiple workers, but your workers aren't really different. It's just a case where you have to play all 3 before you get them back, and you can kind of start your round over again. But what is interesting is that other people can pay you to use your workers to go do something for them. And that's a lot like the trading in Anno 1800.
Yes. I didn't even think of that one, and I really like it. And I had to smile, though, because there's another Uwe Rosenberg game that was my choice, and that's Le Havre.
Oh.
For the same reason, is that you have those escalating quality of goods, and you can use other people's houses, essentially other people's buildings for production if you pay them to do so. And for me, it felt like a real natural fit to Anno 1800. And I thought we were all going to be coming up with Le Havre, so I'm glad that you guys had other ones?
No, I certainly at one point was trying to think of other games that, one player builds something and then other players can use it, because that's a huge part of the game.
Right.
But yeah, none of the Uwe games came to my mind for that.
All right.
But they should have.
So there was one other one, Paul, that it's in the middle somewhere, right? It's like in the 600s, and it's a personal favorite of mine, and I think yours as well. Roads and Boats.
I didn't even think about it.
Oh man, I need to play that. So I've been wanting to. I've never played that.
Oh wow,
and I've wanted to.
Right. Well, we'll have to do a game, like a game afternoon, because it's a longer one. But we should absolutely make that happen.
Please.
Okay.
I since you're giving an honorable mention, I also want to give an honorable mention to Manhattan Project, because that was the first game that I ever played that had a worker reset like the festival. And it also has multiple tiers of workers just like this, where you can upgrade your base workers. You can educate them into engineers or scientists. And it's similar kind of vibe on that. And it's a race just like Anno is. But yeah, the worker reset was the first game I ever played that you chose when you got your workers back, and you could play them more efficiently or play a bunch more out at a time, and then you had to take a turn to get everything back.
Nice. Less recognizable comparison. So Greg, keep rolling. What do you have for your less recognizable comparison?
I chose Praetor. It's a worker placement game where you're using dice as workers. They upgrade, each time you use them to a more powerful worker. And you also have the ability, just like we've discussed, to use buildings that other people build, and you have to pay them to do it. So it reminded me a lot of that. That's the game I ended up finding that fit that bill for me. And it's I've only played it a few times, but it's still in my collection, and not a great game, but it's a good game.
All right. Paul, what did you have?
Yeah, I had the hardest time coming up with a less well-known comparison. I ended up picking Belfort, which is an economic game about building a town for 3 different races of fantasy creatures. And so you have workers for each of the different races. And that's about as far as the comparison goes.
And that's like your favorite game, right?
Oh, no. I don't like it at all.
So why'd you bring it up? But it has a 5-sided board. Come on, what's not to love about that?
I would play it again. I think I've learned to appreciate it after talking to Todd about it quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a game I've had in my collection for a long time, but not gotten to the table just because it seems to have a big overhead of learning how to play every time.
Yes. And this is foreshadowing, but I've said it once already that Anno 1800 has a thing that goes too far for me, and it's the objective cards. Although I enjoy Belfort, and actually I think the few times I've played, I've won like every time. So it's great, right? It's an amazing game. No, but It also has that added wrinkle that often goes a step too far for the people I've been playing with, and that is, at the end of the day, it's an area controlled game. So while you're managing your workers and your resources and trying to chain your building synergies, you also have to remember to put them in the right quarter or the right quinter of the city. And that last piece, a lot of people overlook because they're too busy focusing on business synergies.
I've had that happen a couple times where I finally got it to the table, taught the rules, and then halfway through the first play, when you get to the second scoring round or whatever, people are like, wait, I've done all this work and I didn't score anything?
Exactly. So that's its one drawback. In my mind. My selection was Oh My Goods by Alexander Pfister. It's another one of those, okay, you're going to create base goods and then refined goods. In this case, it's really you're just working on your own industry, and you got to make sure you play with what became the updated rules. And that was, once you've completed your chain, the game used to end, but you didn't get that round to see your chain actually produce when you played the certain number of cards. And Alexander Pfister later updated that and said, okay, everybody gets one turn to see their engine perform. And suddenly the game started getting rated a lot higher, but it's still outside of the top 750. So house rules, since, we were just talking about them, how would you improve this game? Is there any other rules you think of besides the ones we're already using? I feel like this is probably one of our
designer.
It's a house rule. It's not in the printed game. By the expansion, it can be an official rule, but
Yeah, I like the advanced rules we play with. I was actually thinking about this a little bit. I do feel like the fact that the engineer cards don't get into your starting hand, especially in a 4-player game, may be a mistake, because then there's too many of them in that thin little deck of cards that are left.
Right.
I'm wondering if maybe we should revise that to say everybody gets one.
Which is how the expansion does it, yeah.
Well, the expansion says everybody gets an engineer, not an engineer card.
True.
Which similarly, that's because that's the big thing, is it can be a challenge to get your first engineer, and having that card in hand is a big leg up against somebody who's having to go build the infrastructure of glass and windows and then lose a red worker.
Yeah, but if you just give everybody an engineer at the beginning outright, then you don't have to monkey with the starting cards at all.
Probably true. Something to think about. But again, the expansion, though, is accelerated in a number of ways. Gives everybody an engineer, gives everybody an extra trade token, an exploration token. So it's a different game because there's more to do.
Interesting.
Right? If they called the expansion Prelude, I might like the game better.
The other thought I had was maybe draft starting hands so that everybody can try to build synergies from a draft. But I don't know if that would actually work. It'd be fun to try, though.
I would try it.
Drafts make everything better. It's like bacon.
They can make things better, but they don't always make things better.
I'm not so sure about this one, but I'd try it.
I don't know that the deck is built well for a draft, but I like the idea. Maybe an open draft of some kind.
Right?
So
interesting.
I don't know. Because then not only do you have a chance to build your own synergies, but you also know what you're handing off to other people and what they need. So something to think about. It would change the game, though. It would definitely change the game.
That would definitely lower my luck rating to a 1.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's the goal of all these, right? Is house rules to lower luck to 1.
If this game is being played at game night, then what do you want to play afterwards? What's your double feature game, Paul?
It is absolutely got to be Age of Empires 3.
Did you have that originally?
Yeah, I have played it many, many times, same as Greg.
Yeah.
And it's just, the theme is similar. It's set in the same time period, and it's another video game turned board game. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I think it's set a little earlier, but yeah, similar theme in that you're exploring and exploiting the new world.
What is the time requirement on that one?
Yeah, that'd be my concern with Age of Empires 3, is that that one feels like it takes at least 2 hours.
With 5 players, yeah, it's around 2.5 hours.
90 to 120. Now, there was a remake of that was Age of Discovery.
Right. They didn't change much. They added, if I remember right, they added the expansion in as part of the base game and then just did a couple minor tweaks, but I still have the original and the expansion, so... But I have not. That has not hit the table in years.
Right, close to a decade.
Probably.
All right, Greg. So, what's your double feature game?
Well, because I'm realistic about the time we have available, I chose Furnace.
Right. That's a good one. I like it.
Because, a nice similar time, age of industry, and nice kind of something a little lighter and quicker to finish up with.
Felt like an ad hominem attack there.
I don't know why you think that.
Oh, it's just...
That's funny. I followed suit, Greg, not with Furnace per se, but with something lighter and reasonable. And that would be...
Attacks are coming left and right here, Paul.
Oh, he's looking down on us from the victory podium, so
he's like,
it worked.
He's choosing another game he'll crush us at. That's what he's choosing.
I had fantastic factories. So same thing, lighter weight. Let's go ahead and put some industries together and have fun chaining production.
Fun.
What feature of the game still stands out to you? And granted, this game was just released in 2020, so it's relatively new. What has aged the best for you? I'll jump in. I'll say I'm still a fan of multi-layers of goods and refined goods and purple things and luxury goods and warships. How about you, Greg?
Warships.
Yeah, for me, it's the shared tech tree, the dependency, the built-in dependency on what other players build, and the efficiency of trying to get your cards out. I was going to also say the efficiency of using your workers optimally, but I need to get away from that. So I'm crossing that one off the list. There's still efficiency in making sure you get your cards out efficiently, and that involves quickly getting to festival.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Paul, what did you have?
My favorite thing is the end game condition of someone running out of cards and how that combos with being forced to draw a card for every worker you gain.
Yeah.
Right. It's almost like a regulator valve on...
Yeah, it's a feedback loop, totally.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so what feature of the game now disappoints? What hasn't aged as well? Is there anything for you guys?
I really scratched my head. I guess the luck and randomness in the rules is written. That's all I could come up with.
Okay, Greg?
Honestly, for me, it's that racing game aspect to it. I mean, I appreciate it. I know it's a necessary component, but for me, that always leaves me feeling a little bit unfulfilled when I have cards that I had plans and I couldn't do it.
Right. Okay.
But that's more probably on me and my play style than it is on the game itself.
I don't know. There's something to be said for designers trying to put that into a game so
you
always have a taste of wanting more.
I agree. It doesn't change my bitterness at having 5 8-point cards that I should have figured out how to play sooner.
But if Perforian is not in the game, then why not keep building out your industry until you are just churning cards out of your hand? Is that even possible? Are you still going to be building infrastructure if someone else is shooting for the finish line and then come up short?
No, I mean, I think the goal then is to get as many 8-point cards out, like Greg was saying. Just almost ignore your 3-point cards.
Right.
Because an 8-point card is worth more than 2 3-point cards.
Yeah. I think it's also keeping an eye on what other players are doing. If you see somebody is pushing the end, you need to get your 8-point cards. If nobody's doing that, if nobody else is playing their 8-point cards out, go ahead and keep playing the 3-point cards. And because there's a little bit of a snowball in using them, they usually set you up to do other things a little more quickly. But minus the turn you just spent setting up and playing that card, so it's a relative cost.
So for disappointing feature of the game, for me, it's the objective cards. It's one thing too many. If it had one less complication, I think I would like the game better. But I understand that that's also what gives the game variation from play to play. So we'll come around to how that factors in on ratings towards the end. So did this game replace a previous game? And I would just say it felt like we stopped playing brass when we picked this one up, which is ironic because it's another Martin Wallace game. Did you two guys have a thought on what Anno 1800 may have replaced?
I mean, I hadn't made that connection, but I mean, you're kind of right as far as the timing of it, but I don't think it was because it was specifically being played instead of brass. I don't know. I don't see this as far as, being played instead of something else. I see it as just something that's squeezed into the mix because it doesn't really feel a lot like other games that we play. But then again, I don't think we had a good worker placement game like this for a while. I think we had kind of let those slip.
Yeah, I couldn't pinpoint anything as well.
All right. So then has this game been replaced?
Not yet.
That's a no for me.
Do you want it to be replaced? Can we please replace it?
There it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what it's done, in this discussion has made me want to look back at some other similar worker placement games. Maybe we need to get Labora to the table or La Havre. We haven't played those in a while.
Right.
Because I think in general, we tend not to play that much worker placement for whatever reason lately. And it's, and this one isn't even like a competitive worker placement. You're just doing worker placement on your own board. So I don't know. Then again, you guys play DI or Dune Imperium all the time. So you're getting your worker placement there.
I don't consider it worker placement in that even if I'm putting it on my board, I am not taking that space away from you.
Yeah.
In fact, if anything, if I were to go back to say blue coal, let's say I'd used both the blue coal spaces on my board, I can't use them anymore, but you guys can trade for them all you
what
want.
Would you call it? Worker management action?
Yeah, probably.
Make up a whole new mechanic.
Or resource management.
Yeah, I guess it really is resource management.
It doesn't have the worker placement feel to me.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's under the worker placement board game geek thing, but the second half of that is different worker types.
Yeah.
So it may be in this group because it has different worker types for more relevance than the worker placement aspect.
Agreed.
So as far as what it got replaced by, so just for the meme, I would say when we started playing Brass again, when we did the podcast for it, I'll give the same answer. So this replaced Brass, and as far as I'm concerned, Brass can replace this, and I'd be happy.
Yeah.
I'd probably be happy too.
I don't know. I think I'd want something with a tech tree.
Okay.
Something that I really like that shared tech tree. I'd love to see that move in, another game that gives us that. Maybe, I think we're playing both right now, but maybe Beyond the Sun kind of replaced this a little bit.
We just played it Monday.
That's fair. Yeah. Has tech trees and spades.
Yeah, as soon as you said tech tree, I was like, oh, shared tech tree, we know a game, and you've played it, so it's known to you as well. All right, soundtrack. What music would you want to listen to while playing?
I mean, duh.
Right? Like, do we have to even say it?
Yeah, I don't know how you could pick anything other than the actual video game soundtrack.
Right.
I don't know. Video game soundtracks are really, really background noise. I mean, they're not, I don't know. I listened to that today and it didn't really feel to me like what I want to feel. I chose a couple soundtracks from TV shows. One, Dickensian by Debbie Wiseman, and the other, The Gilded Age soundtrack by Harry Gregson Williams and Rupert Gregson Williams.
Okay.
They both have a very 1800s vibe to them, a little bit of an industrial age feel, but also get into like the feel of pulling you back in time to let you feel like you're, not listening to video game.
Right. Okay. So I agree with what you're saying, and yet I feel almost obligated, especially because on the Brass Pod, I'd mentioned that the Anno 1800 soundtrack by Dynamedian is perfect for Brass. So I got to go for it again here and say that it's the actual soundtrack for this game.
What? Is it? Anyway, yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Rating on Board Game Geek scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate this game? So why don't I go first so you guys can salvage this thing? So it should be a 4 for me, which Board Game Geek defines as not so good, but I could play again. I personally define it as not so good. I'd rather not play it, but I could be talked into it on occasion if I have repressed the previous memories. Which is pretty accurate. So, but then I forget about it. And in my mind, it could be a 6, which is okay. We'll play when I'm in the mood. And then I play it again and it goes back down to a 4. So I'll average the 6 and the 4. It's a 5.
So how much do you think your placement in the games influences that? I mean, obviously there's a disconnect between you and this game, and that's going to affect your rating. But how much of it that is like actually, not performing well versus just feeling like you don't connect with it?
So when it was just an activity and not a game, I really liked it. And then once I started thinking I knew what I was doing and got worse, then it got really aggravating, kind of like golf.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Let's put it this way. There's a game that I would prefer to play less than this. So what you guys need to do is put the two of them
dozens and dozens.
Just put all the Martin Wallace games in front of you.
Yeah, no. It's Yunnan.
Oh, right. Well, you're just wrong on that one, though. You're just wrong on that one.
Yunnan is faster than Anno 1800.
Anno 1800, it's sure, it could be a matter of taste. I get it. You're just wrong about Yunnan.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's a reason why we did it in episode 5 or something, right? That was definitely one for you. Okay. Paul, what did you have it on your rating?
So I recently increased my rating of Anno 1800 to a 7.
Okay.
The more I play it, the more I realize I like it.
Nice. All right, Greg?
Yeah, in thinking about it, I actually bumped it up to an 8 for me because it is a game I'll suggest. And, according to those BGG rating systems, I was thinking it feels more like a 7 if I'm being honest, but it's one that I'm very happy to recommend, and suggest when we're thinking about games to try to knock out after in the second half of a night.
Right.
Good point.
Yeah. All right. So is it replayable, and how soon would you want to revisit this game, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. It's replayable. And the more I think about it, the more I think there's more things I want to try, So try a different tactic in the game and try, there's a lot of subtlety to it. It's not a super, super deep game, but there's a lot of subtlety, especially in how you try to get your game going at the start of the game.
Right. All right. And Paul, what did you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's a Perforian game. It will never outstay its welcome.
Nice. All right. So as I mentioned, if I've repressed my previous memories, which looking at our recorded plays and how they were spaced out,
right?
Apparently my memory fades after 4 months.
Okay.
So, so it's a 3 times a year game.
Got it.
You're never going to get this on a 5x5, huh?
Oh, well, we'll see. Maybe?
That's just cruelty.
Yeah, exactly. But if the alternate is none, then I'll get this one done first. And with that, it's been a full round since the fireworks token was claimed. For our next episode, we'll be trying to hide our identities in a classic from 2002. So, hey, thanks for being available tonight, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Todd.
I had a great time.
Thank you for listening to Replayable. Support for our podcast comes from listeners like you. You can find us online at replayable.fm, on Twitter as replayable.fm, and on Instagram as replayable.fm. You can also join our team at patreon.com/replayable. Thank you for your support. We welcome your feedback, which is the only way that we are going to get better. You can get in touch with us via email at feedback@replayable.fm. And if you're interested in sponsoring us, then please contact us at sponsors@replayable.fm.